Trained as a theater director in Soviet-era Russia, he came to Memphis in the 90s and trained a generation of Mid-South students in Germantown High School's award-winning student-run television station. In 2005, he returned home to produce and direct programs in Russia and Ukraine. Today, he's the studio coordinator for GHS-TV with a unique perspective on the art of television. I'm Caleb Suggs, and this is A Conversation with Leonid Mazor. Thank you for joining me in the studio, Mr. Mazor.
Oh, you're welcome. We're glad to have you here in our studios.
So for those watching, we have actually left the typical WKNO studio. We're here in the studio of GHS-TV, Germantown High School's award-winning television station. So thank you for letting us host the show here. It's pretty cool to be back.
Well, it's pretty cool to have you here. You know, I never been interviewed by my former student, you know, so this is the great opportunity for me and for you as well.
All right, so for those just tuning in, Mr. Leonid Mazor here is the TV studio coordinator of GHS-TV, which is Germantown High School Television. Mentored and taught several generations of students at this point in television, film, and acting here at Germantown. Even myself, who was a student here in the 2010s. So it's pretty cool to just come back here and just kind of host this. I didn't know I'd be back in this capacity, so this is pretty cool. It's been about 7 years since I hosted something in here. But Mr. Mazor, this is something that I've been trying to do with you for a long time, have a whole show dedicated to your life, because you are kind of a man of mystery when it comes to a lot of your students. Did you know that?
No, I don't know that I am a mystery, you know, but you know what, let's kind of establish our relationship in this conversation, okay? You don't need to call me anymore Mr. Mazor, like as you did 7 years ago. You can call me Leonid, you know.
My gosh,
that will be fine. Even my name is hard to pronounce for many people. You know?
Leonid, I got it.
Yeah, so you see, you're good at it. You know, not everyone could do that, obviously. Yes, I mean, and no, I did not know that I've been a mystery, you know, for my students, you know. So honestly, I mean, I kind of felt that I'm pretty open, you know, to them.
You have a very interesting backstory that not everybody knows the details of. Just the story of how you came from Russia, or at that time the Soviet Union, and coming to teach in America, in Memphis, Tennessee of all places, and just being one of the foundational people to set up this entire studio that is, you know, one of the most advanced, or the most advanced high school television station in the country. Let's start at the very beginning. What was it like?
So we have to go back to the 20th century, actually, you know, and to the city called Lugansk, which is located in Ukraine. You know, back then it was Ukraine, as many other, actually 16 republic, was the part of the former Soviet Union, you know. And even in the early age, you know, I kind of feel the desire, you know, to be an actor, you know. So I start with the different stuff, you know, that I did, the pantomime and stuff like that. Then in school, you know, I organized a little theater, you know, in the high school. We didn't have, I mean, the luxuries we have here, you know, like the whole arts department, you know. So it was extracurricular things, you know, and I was behind that to organize it, of course, directing those small plays, you know, and become to be a lead in those plays. Actually, what has happened, when I was in the 8th grade, I was casting, you know, in a professional theater play. You know, we have a professional theater in Lugansk, you know, and I was casted there in a small part of the big play. So I was able for 2 years, you know, to kind of experience the professional theater. And so I was aware that I'm a great actor of the whole world, you know. So then I made a decision, you know, that I have to proceed the career. The education, the theater education and the film education as well is very different in Russia. We do not have like a universities here has a theater department or the communication department. Over there it's different, you know. We have a specific institute, you know, when the people receiving the bachelor's or master's degrees, and that institute dedicated directly to the occupation, you know, what you want to take. Actor, director, you know, the set designer, the writers, you know. So this is kind of like a school, the high level school, you know, that you're going to. And it was so hard to enroll because back then in Russia it's only 5 theatrical schools, you know, that you can enroll in, and you understand that everybody would like to be an actor, you know. It was hard to get it. My parents was really opposite of this, you know. They don't want me to become an actor. My mother, I mean, I was born in a Jewish family, so in a Jewish family, or you have to be a violinist, you know, or the doctor, you know. So
that's what I was going to ask. Like, was it normal for somebody to say, I want to be an actor in school? Was it?
I mean, in the Jewish family, it's very unusual.
Got it.
But I mean, we know a lot of good Jewish actors, the actors who are Jewish, But, so my mother was very opposite. But my father, on contrary, was very supported. So we kind of, behind my mother's back, we decided I'm going to do that. Unfortunately, and maybe fortunately for me, I didn't get it. I didn't get it, for some reason. I tried to just enter to every one of them because you have to have a special auditions, to get there. An audition has like 3 phases, and every one of them I get to the last phase, but unfortunately I was not able to get in. But I don't want to come back to Lugansk. Lugansk, it's a very nice city. Unfortunately, it's now part of the confrontation between the Ukraine and Russia, and Lugansk become to be a capital of the one of the republic with Russia's support, and this is actually one of the cause of the war, what's going on over there. So, but back then everything was fine, but I don't want to come back to the city, and honestly, I don't want to become to be a doctor, because that's what my mother wanted. So, because I graduated the school as the valedictorian, in Russia it's called the gold medalist, So I have an opportunity to get in any high institution, like without the exams. And for some reason I have a developed very good love for chemistry, So one of the universities what I chose was the Moscow Chemical Technology Institute. That specific college has a good, the people who run the college has a heart for arts, so we have a different theater. Every department, has a small theater there, so I was a part of one of those theaters, which is, we developed it was only 12 of us, and everyone besides study chemistry, just have a heart for art, so we put all ourselves in it.
Crazy.
And we become to be pretty famous, around the Moscow and then around the whole Soviet Union, as the student theater. But the time passed by, and we all graduated the university, and obviously we have to go to work, and I have to go as well. And I was one of the general manager of the fabric which produced the artificial Christmas trees. I ran that place for a couple years, and then I was drafted to the Army. And in the Army, because of my love for the theater, I did organize the theater there.
In the Army?
In the Army. And honestly to say, this has kind of saved my life, because that year when I was drafted, that was 1982, that was the year, when the war between Afghanistan and Russia, and America as well, go on, so everybody who was drafted actually supposed to be sent over there, but there was a lucky things, lucky accident, let's say, what happened with me, because I was delayed to the draft place, and so my command, whatever it's called, the group, they went to the Afghanistan, and because I was delayed, they didn't know where to place me, so they sent me to St. Petersburg, and over there, actually, I was served as the surgeon over there, and I organized the theater over there, and that theater became to be very, very known all over the military base in Russia, and we have our own airplane, they flew us to all these military bases when we actually performed, over there as well. So when the Army was done, I came back working again in the factory, as I said, keep producing those artificial Christmas trees.
Gotta love it, yeah.
Yeah, all my friends actually still have those artificial Christmas tree, even it was like 40 years, passed by. Anyway, so, and then actually perestroika happened in Russia, 1985. And these things changed a lot. And television, the Russian television, decided to reinstate it the show reestablished. The show what was actually established in 1963. That show called KVN. This is the mix, of the sketches, parodies, improvisations, and this is competition between the teams. And they compete with each other, and it's like a tournament, You have a quarterfinals, you have a semifinals, you have a final, and you become to be a champion, the whole thing. Kind of like Saturday Night Live combined with Who is Lying Anywhere. The show, since it was established in '63, become to be very popular, popular as well that you can rob the stores, when the show was on air. The whole streets was empty. People was glued to the television. In 1972, show was closed, because it's become to be so political sharp, and the government could not, because the whole television was under the government censorship, so the show was closed. And so in 1985, since 14 years, they reestablished the show again because the perestroika gave so much freedom for the people who want to have a freedom of speech, who want to establish their own opinion about the stuff. And that specifically format of the show, the politically sharp, was very needed back then, demanded, and that was reestablished.
And that opened it up for you to get involved?
Yeah, and that's what our team, our student theater, that was when I was in the Moscow Technology Institute, because they know us as as well-known theater, they ask us if we can be a team of this. So I participate as a part of the team. I mean, I was a director of that team as well, and one of the lead actors.
It was like your big break, as they say.
Yeah, it was a big break, but we were pretty successful, and that first tournament, we didn't won all the way, we won most of the phases of this, but we lost in the finale, for more humorous and more advanced team, But we were recognized, the people noted us.
And that jump-started your career.
And actually, and with my friend, who I actually known since 1975, we were close together. We were together in the theater, everything great what I ever done in my life, I just kind of on to this guy, we worked together. So they offered to us, I'm not mentioning his name because I don't want to make any harm to him, because he's in Russia right now and I'm here, and the Russian government not like the people who is in America talking about the peers who still be arrested.
Speaking of America, we got to ask the elephant in the room. How did you end up going from Russia to Memphis, Tennessee, of all places?
Yeah, part of my family in 1978, that was the second wave of the immigration, Jews from Russia to United States and Israel as well. And so they decided to move to United States. So that's happened in 1978. My grandmother was grandfather and two of my cousins, come here. And Memphis obviously was the first place when they choose for a very strange reason. There is a legend about that, because when they were in Italy waiting for the sponsor who will take them into United States, there were several offers, what they received, but that year Memphis Jewish community decided to host it, the Russian immigrants. So they received that offer, and my grandfather, who didn't know anything about Memphis, and when we keep asking him why you decide to choose the Memphis for that, he said, I don't know anything about Memphis, but I know one thing, that the Elvis Presley was born there, that's why I want to go and see it. So obviously, that's what, I don't think so that was a real reason, but we would like to tell that story. So they were the first family who came in Memphis, and then all my other members of my family, my father, my brother, uncle, and they, year by year, they kind of reunited. My decision to move, we were the last one, my family, which is my wife and two of my children, we were the last one who made the decision to go there, to move to United States, because our life was pretty much established.
Right.
But
from the show, you've kind of established your television and film career.
I've become to be one of the 10 top TV directors in the nation, you know, and beside that humorous show, you know, that I mentioned that I was the screenwriter, you know, and the director, you know, I also did several other shows. So, and I did a lot of commercial. I did the first commercial in Russia, you know, ever. That's happened with me as well. There was a lot of things what happened. So we feel fine, you know, in a way. But the things in '92, things get pretty sore in Russia. You know, was no food. You know, the perestroika actually start kind of not going well. You know, and the economy goes down, and we kind of feel that there is the way to just change our life. You know, and because we have a place, you know, to go. And because of my adventure character, you know, because I mean, actually the move here was a real adventure. So we just decided to move here to Memphis, you know. That's how we ended up in Memphis.
Okay, so you're here in Memphis, Tennessee, and, you know, Germantown High has been around for 100 years, but GHS-TV, that comes in the form of Germantown, I think, Cablevision back in '81. Then Bluestein founds the whole place, turns to GHS-TV in '82, and you get here in '94. Okay, so what gets you associated with Frank Bluestein, the founder of the whole Papa Black Playhouse and GHS-TV, and gets you on board with all of this?
Well, very short, you know, because it's hard to find a job in Memphis, especially with my occupation, you know. Every station, every TV station, when I get to it, you know, I have a stamp overqualified, you know, so they don't, even I just said I'm ready to do everything, you know, I'm ready to carry the tapes, you know, from one place to another.
Right.
That they don't want to do this to me, you know, but luckily, Memphis in May that year was dedicated to Russia. So the theater Memphis did the play called Anastasia. And Sherwood Laurie, who was the general manager of this, he offered me to direct the play because that was cool, you know, to have a Russian director to direct the play about the Russian princess and all of this. So this is kind of make my name known in Memphis. I also work at Rhodes. Somebody getting sabbatical, you know, so they offered me the year to touch at Rhodes acting, and I direct the play over there as well. A couple of those kids who were students, who was in this play, now running the high schools all over the city, the theater department over there. Chris Luther, by the way, in Carville as well. When I've been looking for the different theater with my resume, you know, kind of going around the city, try to stick my resume to anybody, you know, I found out the name Popular Pike Playhouse, which sounds so great, you know, so I didn't realize that this was a high school. So when I came there, you know, and Allison Long, you know, who is now the chairman of our department, she was a student back then. She was the first one who met me there. You know, now, since so many years, you know, we're still very close friends and actually working with each other. Anyway, so she introduced me to the Bluestein. Bluestein did Chess back then, you know, the musical, you know, and he invited me to as an acting coach for that, you know, and then I worked with this. And then all of a sudden, the people from Moscow, this is a similar school as ours, you know, it's called the Moscow International Film School, came here, you know. So Bluestein met them, and he was amazed, you know, about the braveness of these people, you know, who rented 2 vans and traveled from the Los Angeles to New York performing without no money, performing on the streets and stuff like that. There was no English actually involved in those people as well.
Right.
You know, so Bluestein called me and said, can you help me, you know, to talk to these people? So I came and we did talk, and because Bluestein was amazed, you know, of what these people do, he said, I will do it. I will take 40 students and 20 faculty members. We will do the play. We will give to each student the camera in their hands, and we will go over to Russia, you know, and perform there, and did the documentary about all of this adventure. And he invited me to be the consultant for that. That's what actually led us to the documentary 100 Visions, you know, with Jim Barrett, actually one of our alumni, you know. He actually put it together, you know, and then Bluestein, seeing me, how I'm working, just actually offered me the job here in Germantown.
To run the studio?
Yes, he offered me the they run the studio and actually directing the plays there. So for
you were doing both.
So
at
we
first.
did both, because the production class, the nature of the production class, what Bluestein actually running, doesn't have a distinction, that you're a theater major or television major. They're working together.
Right.
So we did the plays and we did the TV shows, and so he put me in charge here to run the studio. And also I taught film, intro to the film, I taught intro to the theater, I taught acting, and I taught advanced class film 2 and the production class. So actually for 10 years, there was a 724 work.
Good grief. Well,
that's what we did, but Mr. Bluestein, I'm really thankful for him, when he extend the hand, and kind of take me under his wing, I learned a lot from him. He actually retired in 2013. Me and my colleagues, we're all together, try to keep the legacy, what was established. In 1972, when he starting the Fine Arts Department in Germantown High School, only Fine Arts Department all over the Shelby County schools in 1972. So thank you, Mr. Bluestein, for giving me that opportunity.
Just to kind of cover, why you stayed around, because I know you had the stint where you went back to Russia for 10 years in 2005, I believe.
That's right.
And so what got you to come back, and then what keeps you teaching here, and how have you kind of grown as a teacher from those first years where you were kind of working, I don't want to say overtime doing everything, but also how has your role kind of changed, and how has your perspective changed on teaching since this has been your primary thing for so many years now?
Yes, for 10 years, I kind of gave my life to the GHS-TV and the Poplar Pike Playhouse, actually for Fine Arts Department. And it was fun, it wasn't hard. It was hard, to kind of change the venue, because the shows, what I did was much bigger scale, and the people who I work, much more professionals,
Adults.
Yeah, but I learned, I can tell you sometimes, it's hard to distinguish adult and a child, and especially my students, even now and back then, they are more professional than some adults that I work with. Those 10 years was very, very interesting, intense, and very creative. Then in 2005, I got the offer from Russia, which is, as the Godfather would say, I could not refuse, That was a salary-wise, and the most important things, was the golden years in Russia when the oil money was very high, the price for the oil was very high. There was a lot of money there. There actually was not that much censorship, it was a lot of creative freedoms, So they offered me to come back, to Russia, and actually did the adaptations, for American sitcoms. So I did several of those adaptations. I did Grace Under Fire. I did Suddenly Susan. I work on I Love Raymond. I did Stanford and Son. There was a lot of cool things that I did it. And it was interesting. To work there because I can share a lot. The things what I learned over here in the state.
That's true.
As well, I mean, I can bring something new, to them, to the new approach of adaptations, and actually shooting this stuff.
Right, because you got that first-hand experience of what they're
That's
actually
right.
supposed
Then
to do.
I was involved, to go back to Ukraine, and I become to be the CEO of one of the biggest network in Ukraine, and I ran that place for a couple years, Then I decided to actually, I don't like to be the TV bureaucrat, so I decided to go back and just become to be creative. So I produced, direct several, mostly TV series, that I did. There is different ones. Some of them still running in Russia, but they kind of wiped my name out, as a director from those shows. But then, the things getting sore between Ukraine and Russia, and actually inside of Russia as well, with the Putin kind of dictatorships and stuff like that, I kind of, and because I was in opposition of the government politics, and I said a lot of things, I went to the marches, I went to demonstrations, I tried to express my opinion about that. So the things getting sore, and I feel emptiness around me. Somehow the budget was smaller, the offers was less, and actually none. And my wife kind of started worrying about the things what go on there. And so Mila told me, this is my wife's name,
right,
which I love that name as much as I love my wife. But Mila told me, we need to go. We need to go back. I was hesitated to go back because I almost was back then 50 plus age, so I don't know what I'm going to do it. But Allison Long, who ran the department and still running the department now, she said, do you want to come back, and teach? But that was an escape, so I came back, I went into my office, with the same pictures around on the same table, and I'm surrounding with my former student who is working with me, Mallory, Kenny, Bobby Ramsey. Of course, we're very close with Allison, as well. Mm-hmm. So I kind of felt like back home,
Right.
So honestly to say, I didn't see a lot of changes, in myself.
Yeah.
I'm still doing what I've been doing several years ago, and it's almost 9 years that I'm back.
Has anything changed from that first year coming back in 2015 to now?
Everything has changed, everything changed. The attitude, the approach, the way how we're supposed to teach, everything has changed. Can I say that was worse than it was before? No, it's not. It's different. We have to modify. So things change, but it's changed in a good way. Mm-hmm. And that's only what I can say. Legacy is still there because our legacy, it's a high quality. This is only what we required from the students. We are not here to produce the professionals. This is not our goal. I don't really care if some of them are not going to become to be a director or the anchor, or the cameraman. I don't care about that. I'm not caring as much as I want them to be a decent people. Honest, polite, understand what good and bad and what the high quality means, and how to be honest in your occupation. That's our goal. We're teaching them that. And this is the consist with the manners. This is the consist with discipline. This is the consist with time management. And that's what the life skills we want to give them. It's more important for me that you right now sitting in front of me, interviewing me, and I know how successful you are, and that's make my life valuable or meaningful in a way, and that's what I like about teaching here at GHS-TV.
Thank you for joining me on a conversation with, and of course, anybody can tune into GHS-TV.org and see more of what you're doing and what the new generations, because I think there's, probably like 3 or 4 generations of students and professionals now that have all been mentored through you?
I would say 10.
10? So, yeah, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much, and thank you for coming up here. And by the way, I just want to mention that very quickly, you might cut this, but the cameras, what's running right now, done by my students, and this is, I'm so proud of that, Thank you again for giving us this opportunity.
And thank you for joining us for a conversation with Leonid Mazor.